Before we dive into one of the most dangerous and overlooked missions of World War II, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. This channel brings you the untold stories, the technical battles, the impossible work that shaped history. You won't want to miss what's coming. Now let's descend into the cold, black water off the coast of Normandy, where men worked blind to keep the Allied advance alive. The English Channel, June 1944. The beaches are taken, but the war is far from won. Every hour, thousands of tons of ammunition, fuel, rations, and medical supplies must flow from England to France. Without that lifeline, the Allied advance stalls. Tanks stop. Artillery falls silent. Soldiers go hungry. The problem is this: the coast of Normandy is littered with wreckage. Not just from the invasion, but from years of German occupation, sabotage, scuttled barges, sunken coasters, Allied bombing runs, and the catastrophic storm that tore through the artificial Mulberry harbors on June 19th. Steel beams, collapsed caissons, capsized landing craft, shattered pontoons, and half-submerged cargo vessels blocked the channels and berths. Nothing bigger than a rowboat can get through. The ports are choked. The clock is ticking. This is where the divers come in. Royal Navy port clearance parties, known as P-parties, along with the Royal Navy Salvage Service, U.S. Navy Mobile Salvage Units, and the tough, resourceful men of the Seabees. They do not storm beaches. They do not fly bombers. They descend into darkness, feeling their way through twisted metal and silted water, cutting, lifting, and dragging away tons of debris, piece by piece, so the cargo ships can move again. Is slow, grinding, invisible work. Is also lethal. One mistake, a slip, a snag, a hidden explosive charge, and the diver does not come back up. The water off Arromanches is black even at midday. Sunlight penetrates maybe 6 feet before the silt absorbs it. Below that, it is a void. The diver cannot see his own hand in front of his faceplate. He works by touch alone. His gloves are thick canvas, reinforced leather at the palms, but still sensitive enough to distinguish steel from wood, cable from net, smooth hull from jagged, torn plating. Every surface is a question. Is it stable? Is it sharp? Is it safe to cut, or will it shift and crush him? He does not know until he touches it. He does not have sonar, underwater lights, or cameras. He has his hands, his training, and the voice of his tender on the other end of the umbilical. The diver wears a Mark V hard hat suit, American manufacture, or a British Sea Gorman deep-sea rig. Both are heavy. The helmet alone weighs 35 pounds. Lead-soled boots and a weighted belt keep him on the bottom. Compressed air flows down through a rubber hose from a hand-cranked pump on the barge above. He breathes in short, controlled cycles, listening to the hiss and exhale, trying not to let his heart rate spike. Panic kills faster than the cold. The water temperature hovers around 55 degrees Fahrenheit in June, dropping at night. Even through the rubberized canvas suit, the chill creeps in. A diver can stay down for 45 minutes, maybe an hour, before the cold begins to dull his fingers and cloud his thinking. After that, he must surface, warm up, and let another man take over. Communication is primitive. The diver tugs on his lifeline. 1 pull means I'm okay. 2 pulls mean send down more line. 3 pulls mean take up slack. 4 pulls mean haul me up now. The tender on the barge feels the line vibrate, counts the pulls, and responds. If the diver gets tangled or disoriented, he cannot call for help. He pulls. He waits. He hopes the tender reads it right. Sometimes a strong current masks the signal. Sometimes the line snags on a broken beam, and the pulls do not reach the surface at all. The diver is alone in a way few men ever experience. The world above, sun, wind, voices, feels impossibly distant. Down here, there's only silence, pressure, and the muffled groan of shifting wreckage. The first task is reconnaissance. A team of divers descends methodically along a planned route, mapping the obstructions by hand. One man finds the bow of a sunken landing craft, LCT 487, driven into the seabed by the June storm. He runs his hand along the hull, measuring the angle of tilt, feeling for soft spots where the steel has buckled. He ties a marker buoy to a cleat, then follows the line of the wreck toward the stern. Halfway down, he encounters netting, old camouflage netting, maybe fishing gear, tangled in the propeller shaft and around the rudder. He tries to pull it free, but is embedded deep, choked with mud and barnacles. He signals for a knife. The tender lowers a double-edged blade on a lanyard. The diver saws through the net strand by strand, working slowly to avoid slashing his air hose. It takes 20 minutes. His arms burn. His breath fogs the inside of the faceplate. Finally, the last strand parts. The netting drifts away in the current. He marks the propeller location with another buoy and moves on. The next obstruction is worse. A German coastal barge, scuttled during the retreat, lies across the approach channel to Arromanches. It is a large vessel, maybe 120 feet long, filled with stone ballast to make sure it sank deep and stayed put. The Allies need this channel open. Supply ships cannot navigate around it. The surrounding water is too shallow, too mined. The barge has to go. But moving it is not an option. It weighs hundreds of tons. The bottom is soft mud. Pulling it free would require massive lifting capacity, cranes, pontoons, and weeks of work. The Allies do not have weeks. They have days. The decision is made. Cut the barge into sections small enough to drag clear. The divers descend with oxy-arc cutting torches. These are experimental devices adapted from surface metalworking. A rod of steel cord flux is clamped into an insulated holder. Electric current flows from a generator on the barge, down through a cable to the electrode. When the diver strikes the rod against the steel hull, it ignites underwater, burning at over 5,000 degrees. Oxygen fed through secondary hose accelerates the burn, liquefying the metal in a bright, hissing jet. The diver cannot see the flame. Visibility is zero, but he feels the heat through his glove, smells the acrid tang of vaporized iron when he surfaces, hears the sharp crackle transmitted through the water and up his bones. He guides the cut by feel, running the torch along a pre-marked line chalked onto the hull during a previous dive. The cut is rough, wavering, full of slag and resolidified droplets. But it works. Steel parts. The diver moves 6 inches, strikes another arc, continues. It takes 4 men, working in rotation, 6 hours to cut a single transverse line across the barge. The cuts are not clean. The torch runs out of rod every few minutes. The diver must signal for a fresh one to be lowered. Sometimes the current shifts, sweeping the slag into his faceplate. Sometimes the metal twists as it heats, pinching the cut closed and trapping the rod. The diver has to back off, let it cool, start again. Every delay burns time. Every wasted rod costs resources they cannot afford to lose. But they keep cutting. By nightfall, the first section is free. Cables are rigged. A tug pulls. The section slides off the seabed with a groan that resonates through the water, then lurches to the surface, trailing weed and silt. One down. For more to go. The work is not always cutting. Sometimes the obstruction can be lifted whole. A capsized LCVP, small landing craft, lies on its side in shallow water near Omaha Beach. It blocks nothing critical, but it is in the way, a hazard to navigation. A salvage team decides to right it and float it out. The divers descend with heavy steel cables, searching for strong points on the hull. They find the bow towing eye, still intact. One man threads a cable through, loops it back, ties it off with a bowline. Another diver works at the stern, attaching a second cable to the rudder post. The cables rise to a pair of lifting pontoons, empty oil drums welded to a steel frame. Air is pumped in, displacing water, creating buoyancy. Slowly, the pontoons rise, and the cables go taut. The LCVP shifts. The diver near the bow feels the hull press against him, vibrating with strain. He pushes off, swims clear. The LCVP pivots, rolls upright, and breaks the surface in a gush of trapped air and bilge water. The divers resurface nearby, breathing hard, and the tug moves in to tow the wreck away. Not all lifts go smoothly. A week into the operation, a team attempts to raise a collapsed section of a Mulberry caisson, a massive concrete float that formed part of the artificial harbor. The June storm split it down the middle. Half sank upright, half tilted and wedged into the seabed. The wedged half must come up. It weighs over 1,000 tons. The plan is to use compressed air pumped into sealed compartments inside the caisson to create lift. The divers go down to seal the cracks with oakum, canvas, and quick-setting cement. It is delicate work. The cracks are wide, irregular, full of loose concrete. One man works inside a flooded compartment, guiding a hose that feeds cement slurry. The compartment is pitch black. He cannot see the crack. He feels it with his left hand, guides the hose with his right. The slurry flows thick and gritty. He smears it into place, smoothing it by feel. It begins to set. He backs out, careful not to snag his lines on the jagged rebar. As he exits, a secondary crack opens behind him with a dull thud. Water rushes in, re-flooding the compartment. The cement work is undone. He surfaces, reports the failure. The engineers revise the plan. They will cut away the damaged section instead of lifting it. More diving. More cutting. The presence of unexploded ordnance, UXO, adds a layer of terror to every descent. The seabed is littered with munitions. Depth charges, naval mines, artillery shells, grenades, and God knows what else. Some are German, some are Allied, and none of them have labels. The divers are briefed daily. If you find something metallic, round, with fins or a detonator, do not touch it. Mark it, surface, and report. Bomb disposal teams will handle it. In practice, it is not that simple. The diver is feeling his way through wreckage in zero visibility. His hand closes on a cylinder. Is it a compressed air tank? A fuel drum? A mine? He cannot tell. He traces the outline. Smooth. Cold. No obvious fittings. Maybe safe. He ties a marker line to it, moves away, finishes his task, and surfaces. The bomb disposal officer goes down next. 20 minutes later, he returns. It was a mine, German GY type, contact fuse, still live. If the diver had bumped it harder, both he and the disposal officer would be dead. The officer jokes about it topside, but his hands shake as he lights a cigarette. Controlled demolition is used sparingly. When a wreck is too large to cut, too deep to lift, and cannot be moved by cable, explosives are the only option. But explosives underwater are unpredictable. The shock wave propagates farther, faster, and with more force than in air. A blast that would shatter a beam on land can rupture a hull 300 feet away underwater. Worse, there is always the risk of triggering a sympathetic detonation in nearby UXO. The sappers plan carefully. Small charges, precisely placed, time to fire in sequence. The divers go down one last time to attach the charges, using waterproof fuse cord and blasting caps. They tie the charges to structural weak points, weld seams, stress fractures, thin plating. Each charge is wrapped in sandbags to direct the blast inward, minimizing collateral damage. The last diver clears the area, surfaces, and the barge moves out to a safe distance. The fuse is lit. 60 seconds. 40. 20. Everyone watches the water. The blast arrives as a dull thump felt in the chest, followed by a column of spray and a shock wave rippling outward. Debris surfaces, twisted metal, splinters of wood, air bubbles bursting in thick foam. The divers go back down to inspect the result. If the wreck is broken, they rig cables and pull the pieces clear. If it is still intact, they set more charges. Sometimes it takes 3 attempts. Sometimes 5. The storm of June 19th through the 22nd complicates everything. Winds reach force 6, gusting to force 8. Waves build to 12 feet. The artificial Mulberry harbor at Omaha, already fragile, tears apart. Pontoons snap loose, caissons capsize, and Phoenix breakwaters, deliberately sunk blockships, shift under the pounding. When the storm passes, the harbor is a ruin. The Mulberry at Arromanches, better protected, survives but damaged. Debris is everywhere. Divers cannot work in storm conditions, so the backlog of wrecks grows daily. By the time the weather clears, the pressure is immense. The Army needs fuel. The fuel is on tankers anchored offshore waiting for a berth. The berth is blocked by 3 overlapping wrecks. The divers work double shifts. 18 hours on, 6 hours off. They are exhausted, cold to the bone, hands blistered and numb. But they keep descending. Cherbourg, captured on June 26th, presents a different challenge. The Germans spent weeks demolishing the port before they withdrew. Cranes toppled into the basin. Lock gates blown. Keys mined. Ships scuttled across the entrances. The harbor is a death trap. When the first Allied salvage teams arrive, they find a port that looks functional from a distance but is utterly unusable up close. The main channel is blocked by a sunken freighter, the SS Nomadic, lying at a 45-degree angle across the fairway. The French pilot, a man named Leclerc, who stayed in Cherbourg through the occupation, guides the salvage survey. He points out where the Germans drilled holes in the hull and packed them with demolition charges. The Nomadic went down fast, settling onto a rock ledge with her bow still above water. She has to be moved. The Cherbourg divers work with French stevedores, many of whom worked the port before the war. They know the bottom, the currents, the tricky spots where cables snag. One diver descends to inspect the Nomadic's stern. He finds the rudder intact, propeller missing, probably salvaged by the Germans for scrap. The hull is cracked amidships, the plates buckled. He runs a cable around the sternpost and signals for slack. The cable drifts down, settles into the mud. He digs it out by hand, working in total darkness, guided by the texture of the mud and the weight of the cable. It takes an hour. When he surfaces, his hands are raw, gloves shredded. But the cable is set. The next day, a heavy tug, HMS Bustler, takes the strain. The nomadic shifts, grinds forward 6 feet, then jams on the rock ledge. The divers go back down, this time with blasting charges. They place small-shaped charges along the ledge, away from the hull, trying to crack the rock without further damaging the ship. The blast works. The ledge fractures. The next pull moves the nomadic another 20 feet. By the end of the week, she is clear of the channel, beached on the north side of the harbor, and the first convoy of cargo ships enters Cherbourg. The human cost of this work is measured in small disasters. A diver named Harrison, American, part of a mobile salvage unit, loses his air hose when it snags on a broken stanchion and rips. He is 60 feet down, working on a collapsed pier. The air stops. He has maybe 30 seconds of breath in his helmet. He does not panic. He grabs his lifeline, gives 4 sharp tugs, emergency ascent, and kicks off the bottom. His tender feels the signal, hauls in the line. Harrison rises, exhaling slowly to avoid embolism. His ears scream. His vision narrows. He breaks the surface, gasping, helmet flooded. The crew pulls him onto the barge, tears off his helmet, and he vomits seawater. He is back down the next day. Another man, a British raiding named Clough, gets tangled in old barbed wire strung by the Germans as an underwater obstacle. The wire wraps around his leg, then his air hose cinching tight. He cannot reach the wire to cut it. He signals for help, but the current is running hard and the tender misreads the signal, thinking Clough wants more slack. The hose goes slack, then the current catches it and pulls it taut again, wrenching Clough sideways. He fights to stay upright, yanking at the wire with both hands. The wire cuts through his glove, into his palm. Blood clouds the water. He keeps pulling. Finally, the wire snaps. He is free. He ascends, hand throbbing, and the medic wraps the cut with iodine-soaked gauze. Clough refuses evacuation. There is too much work. Fatigue becomes the invisible enemy. Men dive, surface, eat, sleep a few hours, and dive again. Their bodies accumulate nitrogen. Decompression sickness, the bends, start showing up. Joint pain, dizziness, paralysis. One diver surfaces and collapses on the barge, unable to move his legs. He is rushed to a recompression chamber, a steel tube, where pressure is slowly increased, then decreased, forcing the nitrogen out of his blood. It takes 6 hours. He survives, but his diving career is over. The unit cannot afford to lose more men. Dive times are reduced. Shifts are staggered. Medical officers monitor every diver for symptoms. Still, the work goes on. By mid-July, the main channels at Arromanches and Omaha are open. Supply tonnage triples. Cargo ships, small coasters, and LSTs move in and out in steady convoys. Fuel flows to Patton's tanks. Ammunition reaches the artillery batteries. Medical supplies stock the field hospitals. The divers do not see the tanks rolling forward, do not hear the guns firing. But they know. Every ship they let through carries the war forward. Their work, invisible and grinding, is as vital as any infantry advance. The logistical impact is staggering. Before the channels are cleared, the Allies land roughly 10,000 tons of supplies per day. After the divers finish, that number jumps to over 20,000 tons. The difference is the war. Without fuel, tanks are statues. Without ammunition, rifles are clubs. Without food, soldiers weaken. The divers, working blind in cold water, breaking their backs and risking their lives, keep the supply chain alive. They do not get medals for it. They do not get headlines. But the generals know. Eisenhower himself tours the Mulberry at Arromanches in late July and asks to meet the salvage crews. He shakes hands with a dozen exhausted divers, thanks them, and moves on. That is all the recognition they get. It is enough. The techniques developed at Normandy become standard practice. Oxy-arc cutting, underwater explosives, cable rigging, pontoon lifts, and coordinated salvage operations are refined, documented, and taught. Port clearance becomes a recognized military specialty. The lessons learned in the Blackwater off France are applied in the Mediterranean, the Pacific, and in every harbor liberated from German or Japanese control. The divers at Normandy are pioneers, writing the manual as they work. As the summer wears on, the clearance shifts from emergency work to systematic salvage. The priority wrecks are gone. Now the teams move to secondary obstructions, pulling up landing craft, clearing fishing nets, removing debris that poses no immediate threat but clutters the harbor. It is still dangerous. A diver working near the breakwater at Arromanches finds a submerged, unexploded 500-pound bomb, British manufacture, dropped during a pre-invasion raid and never detonated. The area is evacuated. A bomb disposal diver, calm and methodical, descends with a defusing kit. He works for 90 minutes, disconnecting the fuse by touch, feeling each component with gloved fingers. When he surfaces, the bomb is safe, is lifted out, and taken to a disposal site inland. The harbor crews return to work. By August, Cherbourg is handling more tonnage than any port on the French coast. The salvage teams, having cleared the main basin, move to the dry docks and repair facilities, cutting away bomb damage and preparing the port for long-term use. The French workers, grateful and skilled, work alongside the Allied crews. Language barriers are overcome with gestures, sketches, and shared exhaustion. The port comes back to life. One afternoon in late August, a supply convoy enters Cherbourg, the largest yet. 16 cargo ships, 3 tankers, and a hospital ship. They navigate the cleared channel without incident, tie up at the restored quays, and begin unloading. The harbor master, watching from a control tower, lights a pipe and nods to the salvage officer standing beside him. The officer, a lieutenant commander from the Royal Navy Salvage Service, says nothing. He is thinking of the men still down in the water, the wrecks still waiting to be cleared, the work that never quite ends. But for now, this moment, the port is open. The ships are moving. The war is being won. The divers themselves rarely talk about their work. When the war ends, most return to civilian life, take jobs in construction, fishing, or engineering. Some stay in the Navy, training the next generation of divers. A few write memoirs, dry technical accounts that barely hint at the terror and exhaustion. But the work speaks for itself. The tonnage figures, the operational reports, the testimony of the generals, all confirm what the divers always knew. They were not heroes in the traditional sense. They did not charge machine gun nests or fly into flak. They descended into cold, dark water, cut steel, moved wreckage, and opened the path. Without them, the liberation of Europe stalls. With them, it succeeds. The wreckage of the Mulberries and the scuttled ships remain on the seabed to this day. Divers, recreational and professional, explore the sites, marveling at the scale of the twisted metal and the audacity of the Allied operation. They see the cuts made by oxy-arc torches, still visible after 80 years, and the blast craters where shaped charges broke rock. They see the buoys still tied to rusted cleats, markers left by men who worked in total darkness and trusted their hands and their training. The wrecks are memorials, not to the ships, but to the divers who cleared them. The lesson of Normandy's underwater salvage is this: wars are fought not just with bullets and bombs, but with logistics, engineering, and sheer stubborn persistence. The divers who cut wrecks in the dark water off France understood that. They did not win the war single-handedly, but they made victory possible. They kept the cargo ships moving, the supplies flowing, and the advance alive. That is their legacy. So the next time you think about D-Day and the liberation of Europe, remember this: the battle did not end on the beaches. It continued underwater in freezing darkness, where men with blowtorches and cables fought a different kind of enemy. They fought debris, cold, exhaustion, and time. And they won. If this story moved you, if you learned something you did not know before, do not let this be the end. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell. There are so many more untold stories from the war, and I am here to bring them to you. The work continues, just like it did for those divers. Stay with me. Let us keep these histories alive. I will see you in the next one.